condemning war. Pope Francis delivers closing remarks at an interfaith gathering in Kazakhstan. We have the latest. Lying in state. Lines of mourners stretch several miles as people pay their respects to the departed Queen. We have a report from London. All aboard. A new deal may avert a potentially crippling national railway strike. We're at the White House. And fight for the unborn. Tracking new developments and possible setbacks internationally and here in the U.S. On EWTN News Nightly for Thursday, September 15th, 2022. Thank you so much for being with us tonight on this Feast of Our Lady of Sorrows. I'm Tracy Sabol. Pope Francis concluded an interfaith gathering in Kazakhstan today, saying religion can never be used to justify war.
Abbiamo convenuto nell'affermare che il mutuo rispetto.
In remarks ending the conference, the Pope said mutual respect should be extended to all people regardless of religion. He supported its declaration that the causes of war have nothing to do with authentic religion. Pope Francis asked religious leaders to help improve global living conditions. He also called upon heads of state to promote disarmament and peace. New details are emerging about Monday's funeral in London for Queen Elizabeth II. Meantime, the line of mourners waiting to pay their respects at her casket is stretching more than 4 miles. Incredible footage. Just look at this right here. Tens of thousands of people spent hours waiting to file past the Queen's coffin as it lies in state at Parliament's Westminster Hall. Earlier today, Buckingham Palace released details for Britain's first state funeral since 1965. Royalty and world leaders are expected to be among the 2,000 people attending the service inside of Westminster Abbey. And we head now to London with Philip Crowther, affiliate correspondent for the Associated Press. Philip, welcome back. Great to have you as always. We have just seen this incredible footage of the long lines to pay respects to Queen Elizabeth II. I know you're standing right outside of where the casket is located. Can you describe to us the scene and also the atmosphere in the country right now?
Yeah, happy to do so. It's nighttime now here in London, and I think you can see over my left and right shoulders those long lines of people who are now slowly but surely getting to their destination. These are the Houses of Parliament. You can see behind me, Westminster Hall is the oldest part of the Houses of Parliament, and that is where Queen Elizabeth II is now lying in state. That is where these people are heading. They will not be allowed to use their phones. This is not a chance for them to take photographs of the casket. They will be allowed to file by the casket for maybe around a minute each of time they have to actually see it and experience the atmosphere inside Westminster Hall. And the atmosphere is different, really, for the people who are entering and then exiting, because it's a good-natured line that has been formed here, and a very long one as well. People making friends, of course, inevitably by standing with the same people for such a long time. But when you're the other side of the Houses of Parliament, where the people are exiting, having seen the casket, having prayed maybe over the casket of Queen Elizabeth II, you're seeing teary eyes and people who've very much been moved by what they have seen. You've seen the pictures of this line as well. It is now almost 5 miles long. If you know London a little bit, it goes all the way to Tower Bridge. That is an awfully long way. And the wait time right now for people who want to see this casket in person, well, that is 8.5 hours, according to the British government. An official period of mourning still underway here in the United Kingdom ahead of the state funeral of the Queen on Monday.
And Philip, we do understand that Buckingham Palace has released the details for Monday's funeral. What more can you tell us about that?
Yeah, and you won't be surprised to hear necessarily that the Queen was intimately involved in planning her own funeral. That is what Buckingham Palace has told us today. You'll see her faith, for example, reflected in the service in Westminster Abbey that's just next to us here, next to the Houses of Parliament. There'll be some music as well, some of her favourite music. And of course, what is most notable here maybe is one of the biggest ceremonial events that the United Kingdom has held for a very, very long time, with so many heads of state and heads of government, members of royal families coming here to London as well to take part in this state funeral of the Queen. The first one, as you mentioned, for a long time since the death of the former Prime Minister Winston Churchill. US President Joe Biden, of course, will be here alongside First Lady Dr. Jill Biden. The French President Emmanuel Macron has also said he will be here. Indeed, a lot of heads of government and heads of state will be here before they head to New York City, in fact, and the UN General Assembly. There will be a 2-minute silence at the end of this service on Monday around lunchtime, more or less. The night before, on Sunday, there will be another minute silence that is to be observed around the United Kingdom.
And we have maybe about 30 seconds left or so, but curious, how is King Charles III doing? We understand that he spent a very quiet day today, and also understand that today is the birthday of Prince Harry, and probably a solemn one at that.
Yeah, it's been a quieter day for the royal family. It's been an incredibly busy and, of course, a tragic time for King Charles III. He has travelled to all of the nations that make up the United Kingdom, and indeed next up for him is Cardiff, the capital of Wales. He's been to Edinburgh already. He's been to Belfast as well. And, of course, he's had to march behind the casket of his past mother. These are very difficult moments for King Charles III, despite the fact that this is something that was inevitable, that had been in the planning, of course, the state funeral as well. And there will be more of that for the royal family when it comes to the actual state funeral. The cortege, again, will go from Westminster Hall, where the casket is right now, to Westminster Abbey, essentially across the road. But then there will be a longer trip past Buckingham Palace before that casket eventually ends up in Windsor. That is where the burial will take place on Monday evening here, local time.
Philip Crowther in London, thank you so much. And back here in the United States, strike averted. President Joe Biden said that he was pleased to announce a tentative labor agreement between railway workers and railroad companies. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Tracy, good evening to you. The president called it a big win for America. And when the speech was over, I questioned him from afar about the high cost of food.
In the Rose Garden, President Joe Biden addresses the labor deal that was reached, praising both the unions and the rail companies.
And this is a win for tens of thousands of rail workers and for their dignity and the dignity of their work. It's a recognition of that.
A strike would have been very bad for the economy, costing an estimated $2 billion a day. Passenger commuter service would have been impacted as well.
With this agreement, railroad companies will be able to retain and recruit workers. They'll be able to continue to operate effectively as a vital piece of our economy.
When he was done speaking, I asked him this.
Mr. President, grocery prices are up over 13%. What do you tell struggling Americans?
Rail's moving, it's not going to go up.
We are Americans.
Also today, the White House hosts a United We Stand summit. In attendance, the White House says, are survivors of hate-motivated violence, faith and community leaders, business leaders, and law enforcement officials.
Today, we must rededicate to joining together to help our communities prevent, respond, and recover from acts of hateful violence.
Republican National Committee Chair Ronna McDaniel just wrote in Newsweek, 2 years ago, Democrats demanded that cities defund their police departments. More than 20 major cities, all Democrat-run, did just that. Crime skyrocketed, and ambush-style attacks on law enforcement, which increased 115% in 2020, are now on pace to reach historic levels.
Now, tomorrow, President Biden meets with South Africa's president, and one thing they'll discuss is the war in Ukraine. In addition, tomorrow, the president will meet with the families of Americans Brittany Griner and Paul Whelan. They're both jailed in Russia, and the White House says they're trying to bring them home safely. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Abortion access could be available on government property, even in states where abortions are banned. The Veterans Administration says that it will start offering limited abortion services at its federal health facilities. Republicans claim the Biden administration is breaking the law. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales has that story.
Well, good evening, Tracy. You know, some 9 million veterans and their family members use the VA system. Now, a new policy with the Biden administration could actually allow some abortions to take place inside those VA facilities. Republican Senator Josh Hawley calls it criminal.
I think no matter where Americans are on the issue of abortion, the overwhelming majority say you shouldn't use federal tax money to do it, let alone the military. And now they're trying to use the military and force military providers to do this. I think it's really, really wrong.
In a statement, VA Secretary Dennis McDonough says the new policy will nullify state laws, including those that ban or limit access to abortion. Quote, pregnant veterans and VA beneficiaries deserve to have access to world-class reproductive care when they need it most. That's what our nation owes them, and that's what we at VA will deliver. VA data shows that there are some 2 million female veterans in the United States, and about a quarter of them are enrolled in VA care.
This is just shocking. First of all, I think it's a violation of the law as it's written. I can't imagine that any American is going to be happy with this president using taxpayer dollars for abortions, but this is just an example of how extreme this Democrat Party is when it comes to abortion.
Senator James Langford wrote the VA secretary demanding an explanation, stating, quote, current federal law and regulation prohibits the VA from providing abortion services. Section 106 of the Veterans Health Care Act of 1992 directs the VA to provide women with, quote, general reproductive health care, not including abortions. I asked Senator Rick Scott if Republicans are planning to sue.
Absolutely. We're looking at that because my understanding there's an existing law. We're going to make sure, but there's an existing law that you cannot do that. And so we'll hold the VA accountable.
It's important to note that currently right now the VA does not provide those abortions. The new Biden administration policy is set to go into effect sometime next month. Now, a legal battle could be brewing because several state attorney generals plan to block this abortion access at VA facilities. Tracy?
Well, Eric, I understand that there is some developing news about the Marriage Equality Act. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it's just breaking news right now. As Senator Tammy Baldwin has decided to, she's been the Democrat who's been in charge of this whole Marriage Equality Act, the chief negotiator named by Senator Schumer to work with Republicans. And right now she cannot get 10 Republicans to cross over and vote for this Marriage Equality Act. So she has decided to push it until after the November midterm elections. So that's the very latest news from Capitol Hill. Tracy?
Okay, thank you so much, Eric. Appreciate it. China's President Xi Jinping and Russia's President Vladimir Putin held talks today in Uzbekistan. They met on the sidelines of a regional summit aimed at countering an alliance of the U.S., Australia, Japan, and India. The Russian leader thanked his Chinese counterpart for a balanced approach to the war in Ukraine. Beijing issued a statement which did not mention the conflict but did support Russia's core concern about national sovereignty, which China cites as a reason to press claims over Taiwan. The president of Ukraine calls on Western allies to provide more defensive equipment. President Vladimir Zelensky says Ukraine desperately needs air defense systems and anti-missile systems to counter Russian strikes on civilian infrastructure. He also met today with the European Commission president to discuss more funding. 2 busloads of migrants from the U.S.-Mexico border were dropped off in a rather unusual place right by the residence of Vice President Kamala Harris. Texas Governor Greg Abbott says that he sent the buses to call on the Biden administration to do its job and to secure the border. New York City is also seeing an influx of migrants sent from the southern border. Mayor Eric Adams toured an immigrant welcome center today to see how his city is responding. The mayor criticized Republican leaders for putting migrants on buses. He calls it inhumane.
It's just creating a real crisis. And that is the problem that we shared to our lawmakers in Washington, that this is a blueprint that you're going to see start unfolding.
Well, Republicans place the blame on Democrat-led sanctuary cities, saying they incentivize illegal immigration. Coming up, the White House unveils a new approach to combating COVID-19. Plus, reaction to a United Nations resolution that favors abortion. The Biden administration announces a new approach to COVID-19. It says this updated framework aims to end the emergency phase of the pandemic and integrate COVID-19 response activities into existing health systems. The administration says a new goal is to strengthen global readiness for future pandemic threats. A pro-life law takes effect in Indiana today, despite 2 lawsuits by abortion supporters. The new law restricts abortion after 13 weeks of pregnancy and limits procedures to hospitals or affiliated outpatient centers. Other abortion clinics would not be licensed. Doctors in violation would be held liable. Separately, a county judge in Ohio has issued a 2-week restraining order against the state's heartbeat law. It took effect in June after Roe v. Wade was struck down. Abortion supporters are suing to overturn the law, claiming it is vague and violates civil liberties. Well, the United Nations passed a resolution earlier this month calling abortion, quote, a human right. It is the first time the UN's General Assembly has used that language. It was included in a bill opposing gender and sexual-based violence. We go now to Austin Ruse, president of the Center for Family and Human Rights, or CFAM, who has been following this story. Austin, great to see you. Talk to us why you think the General Assembly passing this measure sets a worrying precedent, even though the vote is non-binding.
Indeed, the vote is non-binding, but even non-binding resolutions have an impact on the UN on the UN system itself, which is several billion-dollar agencies that influence policy around the world. And that's the real worry, is that this language will be built upon, it will be picked up by lawyers and judges around the world who will erroneously say that this non-binding resolution establishes a right to abortion. This is a false claim, but it's a guarantee that this is what they will do.
Austin, I'm curious, what about the pro-life members in the United Nations? Did any of them push back on this pro-abortion measure?
They certainly did. There were a number of African delegations that pushed back. Understand that this document was under negotiation for about 5 months. The chair of the negotiating committee, Japan, would not allow any amendments or real discussion over these last 5 months. At the end of the day, that is to say, when it really came before the UN General Assembly, there were amendments that were put forward by Nigeria and backed by a number of UN member states, but these all failed. Sadly, pro-life countries like Hungary and Poland not only sponsored the amendment, but sponsored the resolution, but voted against the amendments. So we're in a little bit of a pickle. But hats off to Nigeria and a number of African countries who really stood tall on this issue.
And I'm wondering, Austin, also, what comes next? I know you recently wrote that the Biden administration is very actively pushing its pro-abortion agenda in the UN.
Well, yes, the Biden administration is more aggressive than any administration we've ever seen. I mean, my organization has been active at the United Nations through a number of administrations, including the Clintons and the Obamas and now the Bidens, and they are more aggressive on this particular issue than any that we have ever seen. So we expect more aggression on this matter. The unfortunate thing about this language is that it will then be repeated in other resolutions, and the claim that they make is that it establishes customary international law. Also a false claim, but that's what they will do.
Austin, is there anything else going on in the UN right now that you feel is important for our viewers to know about?
Well, there are negotiations every single working day of the year where these types of issues are pushed by the European Union, the United States. So there are negotiations, large and small, that are happening all the time. The most worrying thing right now is that there are some who are looking to initiate a new treaty on crimes against humanity, and that will be a very dangerous moment because they will try to strike down some very good language, for instance, on gender. Gender in international law is understood as men and women, and we understand that they're going to try and strike that down in this upcoming negotiations on crimes against humanity. So it's an everyday affair at the United Nations.
Well, Austin, thank you so much for coming on. Always great to get your insights. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Up next, the battleground state, which is hosting the first March for Life after Roe v. Wade. The state of Pennsylvania is set to host the first March for Life since Roe versus Wade was overturned. The gathering takes place Monday morning in Harrisburg. The day will begin with mass, followed by the rally and then testimonials. It will be a busy day at the state capitol. September 19th is also the first day that both the Pennsylvania House and Senate are in session. And joining us now is Alexis Sneller, Policy and Communications Officer for PA Family, the group helping to organize the Pennsylvania March for Life. Alexis, thank you so much for your time today. As we mentioned, this is the first March for Life since Roe versus Wade was overturned. What has been the response so far, and what sort of crowd are you expecting?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And we have had an amazing response so far. We've been able to partner with amazing pro-life groups across the state. Last year, we had almost 5,000 Pennsylvanians, and we're expecting even more this year. So like you mentioned, this is the first ever post-Roe March for Life, which is incredibly historic. And I think that there's going to be so many Pennsylvanians in our Commonwealth who are excited to gather as a community to celebrate and then to look at the next step forward, because the fight is not over for life.
And Alexis, can you talk about, maybe who some of the speakers will be? I understand that several state lawmakers will be on hand for the event.
Yes, we will have several state lawmakers, including the Speaker of the House, Brian Cutler, and also the Senate Majority Leader, Senator Kim Ward. And that's just to name a few. So we will have quite a number of them. And it was really exciting because last year we actually had some legislators tell us that this was the biggest group they have ever seen in front of the Capitol. Our march is right on the steps of our Capitol here in Harrisburg. So it sends such a strong message to all of our lawmakers and legislators to let them know that we are a Commonwealth, we are a people in a community that is going to advocate for our culture of life in Pennsylvania.
And Alexis, I'm curious, for those, maybe who are not familiar, where does PA now stand when it comes to abortion? What's the current law? And also, what's the overall sentiment among Pennsylvanians?
So unfortunately, right now, our current law allows for abortions up to almost 6 months of pregnancy, when the baby has a heartbeat, can feel pain, and is even starting to react to light outside the womb. So we have very antiquated laws compared to most of the rest of the world. So we really have a lot of work to do. And with Roe versus Wade overturned, that's removed a big roadblock to now we're able to start to have these conversations and start to make improvements and progress for life. And I do believe that the sentiment of Pennsylvanians is one that is looking forward to continue to develop a culture of life.
And Alexis, you mentioned, it sounds like this is going to be a really wonderful event this year. Overall, though, can you give us a snapshot of how the pro-life movement is doing in the state of Pennsylvania, especially amid the hotly contested Senate race between Democrat John Fetterman and Republican Dr. Oz?
It's been an exciting time for the pro-life movement in Pennsylvania. Our organization has even done a series of events called Life After Roe, where we're traveling across the state, giving people information on what they need to know in a post-Roe world. But like you mentioned, we are a battleground state. This is a very hotly contested election. And so it's important for people to know what elected officials stand for and what candidates stand for. We do put out a voter guide. It's not out yet, but if you sign up for our emails at pafamily.org, you'll get a voter guide that will tell you where these candidates stand on key issues that you care about and allow you to make an important decision so that we can have the Pennsylvania that we're all working towards.
And Alexis, we're almost out of time, but for those who are wondering where they can get more information for Monday's march, where can they go to get that?
Yes, everyone should go to pamarchforlife.org. We have our schedule, information on parking, all of those details, also details on the 9:30 Mass, and then we also have a 1:30 Mass after the march. So it'll be a really exciting day, and I'm excited to see everyone there.
Well, Alexis, thank you so much for coming on, and good luck for the march. We're praying for you all.
Thank you so much.
And we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sabol. Good night and God bless.